President Donald Trump continued his dramatic reversal of U.S. policy on Ukraine today with even more attacks on the Ukrainian president. Trump says it's not important for Volodymyr Zelensky to be in the talks to end the war and that you get sick of watching him negotiate.
I've had very good talks with Putin, and I've had not such good talks with Ukraine. They don't have any cards, but they play it tough. But we're not going to let this continue. This war is terrible. It would have never happened if I were president, but it did happen, so I got stuck with it.
After convening other Ukrainian allies this week, French President Emmanuel Macron says he's headed to Washington to meet with President Trump next week.
Et donc, ce que je vais faire, c'est je vais lui dire.
Yesterday, Macron said he'll tell Trump that he can't be weak with Russian President Vladimir Putin, or he could lose credibility with China. Michel Miraillet is France's ambassador to Canada. Ambassador, it's good to see you again. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for your invitation.
Let's look ahead to the meeting next week at the White House with President Macron and President Trump. What is President Macron hoping to accomplish when he meets with Donald Trump?
I know it's not his first visit, and you know that there's a special relationship between both presidents. I think that we are now in times which are some maybe the bleakest for the European Union, for Europe. I mean, the European security, and it's time. I think the president wants to say right in the eyes of President Trump what he thinks about what we are expecting from the United States of America, from our first ally. And I think that the message is we need to support Ukraine. We need to support them because it's a question of security for democracies.
He said again today, President Trump, that the war isn't Russia's fault. He has called President Zelensky a dictator. What does it mean for Europe that the U.S. president is essentially parroting Russian disinformation?
I would say that I would just recall what Talleyrand was used to say. Anything excessive is insignificant. And I mean, it's time to cool down and to look at facts and really to remind some people and the U.S. and new U.S. administration that the United States have just invested in the security of Europe since 1945, and we are defending democracies. And I mean, just raising the name of the President Zelensky or giving him some adjectives, has no result. I mean, what we are looking for is just to denounce the fact that the Russians are the aggressors, and we have to stand all together in order to counter them.
Right, but the entire security posture of Europe, a lot of that came out of the Second World War, a lot of it at the insistence of the Americans, right? Which is why some countries didn't pursue nuclear weapons and didn't have nuclear programs, for example. And you've come to rely on that as a check against Russia. And now we have this. I know your point about anything excessive is insignificant, but everything's excessive right now. And it feels like it is significant because you have J.D. Vance cheering on extreme parties in Europe in elections over there. And now this favoritism, it seems, towards Vladimir Putin.
Yes, I would like to say that, the time for diplomacy is not the time of social media. You can say whatever you want on social media. What counts is really real facts and what you can do. The security of Europe may be partly at stake for the first time. One more time, last week was the bleakest one for Europe since 1945, maybe, since the fall of the
Berlin Wall, or
the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
Now we will see what we can organize, what we can do. The security, you were talking about nuclear deterrence. There's a nuclear deterrence that protects Europe. It's the French one, also the British one. So, the question is just now, Europe is facing what we have just flagged for the last 2 decades. We need a strong European pillar within the alliance. It's not a competition with the Americans, but we need to build something else. We were alone 10 years ago. Now we see a new group of allies, the Poles, the Italians, even the Brits, who look at what they are moving on that direction. So,
right.
We need to seize this opportunity. It will cost us a lot of money in terms of budget, in terms of decision, but we have to do it.
So Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is also going to Washington next week. And President Macron has said that he spoke with President Zelensky 4 times this week. He convened that extraordinary meeting of European leaders and the Prime Minister of Canada.
Yeah.
Rare that the President of the United States would not be in a meeting like that, given the traditional alliances. Is there a consensus emerging from those conversations on what can be done and should be done?
It should be done. I mean, is certainly to send the right message to Moscow. I mean, that this war, the continuation of the war, will have a huge price on the Russian economy, and it's already the case. But we need to increase the pressure, and you know that Europe will announce a 16th train of sanctions on Monday. We need also, I mean, to beef up our financial support to Ukraine. And that's going to be a decision taken on Monday, most probably. After that, I mean, we were quite happy to have Canada with us. I mean, we need to send this message that you can't have a ceasefire, you know, without security guarantees. Right. And the Europeans are there to support and to have this guarantee, to offer those guarantees. This is the case of the Brits. This is the case of French. But other nations are ready to do it. Sweden, I understand. So I mean, this is the message. This is the very strong message. There can't be a ceasefire, and after that, a call for elections. You know, that would fragilize the Ukrainian society. This is the trap, the Putin's trap.
And that's about pushing out President Zelensky. I mean, that's what that is.
Absolutely.
Right?
But the support for President Zelensky will be there. And, you know, I don't know what the American administration will decide after that. But they will perceive directly, and I think that my president will be very blunt, and has already been blunt yesterday by saying that if you want to be tough with the Chinese, first of all, start to be tough with Russia.
But you mentioned security guarantees, and Europe has been consistent in its desire to provide that to Ukraine, despite it not being in the EU and not being in NATO. But President Zelensky himself said last week, that security guarantees without America are not real security guarantees. I mean, can Europe and the rest of the allies be enough to prevent major losses to Russia for Ukraine?
Yes, but I would have said the same if I was in the boots of President Zelensky, because what you need is the first major superpower, and it's not a big information that, I mean, Europe doesn't have the capabilities in order to provide, you know, enough ammunition, even if the situation has improved for the last year. I mean, you need it. You need the strength. You need this economy behind you. So, I mean, I don't think that President Zelensky wants to cut the ties with the American people, and I should say there's enough time, you know, to try to convince President Trump that there's another way.
But you know, we all saw the reports of when U.S. representatives put a piece of paper in front of President Zelensky, essentially asking him to sign over 50% of the critical minerals in the future as a repayment for the support they got during the war. I mean, when you see moves like that, you know, being given to a wartime leader, I don't remember the rest of NATO sending a bill to the U.S. after 9/11 and going to Afghanistan. It's just you came to the defense of an ally. But when you see that sort of transactional action on the behalf of the U.S. administration, that cannot be reassuring in terms of the future actions of this government when it comes to dealing with this.
It's a brand new administration.
Well, it's the second time that he's been president, so it's not completely brand new.
I think it's a very different one. I think it's a very different one. But it's, I don't think, I mean, brutality is part of international affairs. I mean, the art of the deal is certainly very effective for many things, but maybe not for international affairs. And when you know the Ukrainians, when you know what is Ukraine, the way this country and its people has been able to oppose the Russian aggression, I mean, there's a need for respect.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's there, just as a final point? Because the language, we've seen it here in Canada, it's not the way you talk to friends and allies, increasingly. There's more praise for Vladimir Putin than there is for Justin Trudeau, for example, or President Zelensky. We've seen J.D. Vance go to the Munich Security Conference and talk openly about his support for the Alternative for Germany, which is, an extreme party listed as a security threat by Germany. And I feel, given their history, when they say that, we should take them seriously. So what does that tell you about the nature of the government, that they would cheerlead in elections amongst allies for parties like Reform UK and the AFD?
It's a very difficult question. It's really, ingerence is something we can't accept. The best answer is just to show very quickly that Europe stands firmly, and the old democracies, the old Europe, who knows the price of war and aggression, is not ready to accept anything. And it's maybe the end of the story.
Yeah, and New Europe knows well the price of Russian oppression. Ambassador Miraillet, I always appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.